Thank you for joining us today. I'm Surjeet Seehra, Partner and Practice Director at BTQ Financial. I'm joined here by Amy Harclerode, CEO of Hetrick-Martin Institute, also known as HMI. We've been working together with HMI for over a couple of years now. I'll hand it over to Amy.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. HMI is, I think, 2.5 years almost, 3 years that we've been working with BTQ. As Surjeet said, I'm the CEO, and HMI is the country's, probably world's oldest LGBTQ youth serving organization based here in New York City.
So what we'll do is we'll start our discussion. We'll talk about the organization, what the organization does, the mission, the community it serves, and then we'll lead our discussion into how BTQ came along and that journey and how it has turned into an evolving partnership. So for those of you who may not know about HMI, Amy, why don't you share a bit about the organization, the mission, and the young people you serve, the impact it has on our community?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, as I mentioned before, HMI is the world's oldest LGBTQ youth services organization. We started in 1979. We serve queer and trans young people between the ages of 13 and 24, and we do it in a couple of different ways. The primary ways, we have a drop-in center where we have about 1,000 members a year, where we provide counseling and meals and housing, case management, jobs, education in community. And so, on top of all of those benefits, we're actually seeing a reduction in depression and anxiety in the young people that are coming into our space, which right now feels more important than ever. And we also do a lot of advocacy in other communities and other youth serving communities and working on systems change to make systems more accommodating and affirming of queer and trans young people.
Great. I know before BTQ came on board, before we were engaged to provide finance and accounting services at HMI, there was a lot going on internally. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? And at what point did HMI leadership feel that something needed to change to deal with those challenges and the breakdown that the organization was having?
Yeah, so I want to say that it happened probably on the backside of COVID. As we were coming out of COVID, we were figuring that out. At that time, I was the chief development officer, so I saw a solid half of the organization's revenue. And we had had some turnover in CFO leadership a couple of times. And what became very apparent is the burden of trying to retrain and onboard somebody in that role or more people in a finance department when you really only had the capacity of the person who was leaving with that level of expertise in finance. And so it exposed us to some risk and some liability in terms of our financial record keeping and our ability to understand what was coming, cash flow, all of the things we worry about as a nonprofit organization. And so we came to a point where as we were looking to fill another CFO position, one of our board members suggested outsourcing. And it was something very new and scary to us because we'd never outsourced anything. And so we took the jump, and I'm very, very glad we did.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, outsourcing is a big decision. It could be very scary for nonprofits, and you got the board weighing on that. And you were in a different role at the time, right? You were heading the development department. At that point in time, did you, when you heard that from the existing leadership, the CEO, like what concerns did you have that, the organization was going to just outsource its finance and accounting department? That's a big change.
Yeah, well, and I think there was a couple things, and the things that I originally feared, I don't think actually turned out to be a real fear. And I think, when you have people in-house and when you're a small team with a few resources, you get really accustomed to, I know there's a process, but I need it now, and like jumping through a process. And so thinking that there was not going to be as fast of a turnaround or thinking that we weren't going to be able to have these kind of immediate responses to questions or needs that we had, that ended up not being a thing at all because we have multiple people responding to multiple things instead of one person responding to it for us. As the development side, I think, we keep records that are more in a relationship management capacity. And so we have all of the documentation that populates how you allocate across different grants and different parts of the organization, but it's seeing the expense side of it I realized how much more we didn't keep. And so I think there was an expectation from me as the head of development that so much was going to be based, so much of our financial record was going to be based on a relationship management database. And that felt really scary because I wasn't keeping it as a financial database. I was keeping it as a relationship management database. And so I think that was a growing pain for all of us as we as we jumped into some of that.
Yes, and I can attest to that, right? Like during onboarding, the development department had these very organized records of all the money and the receipts and everything coming in, and it almost felt like they were the accounting department, right? And we were relying on them for the information rather than the actual finance department. So you were heading a great department. You were doing an amazing job, well beyond fundraising. Um, at what point did it start to feel like less like a vendor relationship and starting to become more like a partnership with BTQ?
I think a couple of different times, and I'd be interested what you think as well in that, Surjeet. But the I think the first time is we had a leadership transition when I went from being CDO to CEO. And a lot was happening organizationally at the time. And so it was really like drinking out of a fire hose with all of the information that was coming towards me. And I would say at that point, we were in still a iron out the kinks part of our finance record. And the patience that, it really for half of, the expense side of the organization, it looked like BTQ starting over again and explaining it to me, and bringing me on board with how that looked, and bringing our full staff on again with like how that looked through my leadership. And so that felt like a really important moment. And between BTQ and our finance chair at the time, I think I learned more about finance in that first 6 months of my role than I ever thought or maybe even wanted to, but I'm so grateful that I have at this point. And then I think the second one was, as we got to know each other, well, there's so many, like, as we get to know each other a little bit more, really being able to hone in on where there are bottlenecks in the relationship and our ability to produce information, correct information, timely information in communicating with each other. And so we built a position together, to address that, and something that didn't exist before. And that felt, we interviewed together, we built the job description together. It's not something that was ever experienced. I think we'd been talking about it for a long time, and we'd finally got to the point where we built that trust. And every time we have an event or every time we get a grant, it really feels like Weedley and the whole team are as excited as we are about, as the development team is about a new grant coming in. It really does not feel like an outsourced group of people that is transactional outside of the organization. It truly feels like everybody is as invested in what we're trying to do and what we're trying to hold together in a really volatile moment for fundraising for this community right now. It feels like we're kind of all on the same side. But I'd be interested, Surjeet, if there's a different moment when you thought that.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, there are several, right? Like we've built our relationship, the partnership relationship over the number of years. When we came on board, it was challenging, right? There was the previous leadership, we were reaching a bottleneck there. And then with you coming on board, it was like a swept of fresh air, right? Like then starting everything, building processes, building workflows. You took out the time to understand, what the end outcome was, what we were trying to achieve, what we were trying to set up. So is that working together is the reason we are here today, and it's gone so well. I remember the first year we handled 3 audits. Who does that, right? Like on top of onboarding and bringing on a brand new account, building workflows, and then you're handling the previous audit, and that audit firm is no longer going to do your current audit, and then you're dealing with the new auditors. So doing 3 audits back to back, and it's just that's how the team learned, to build the relationships with the program staff, with the finance, the executive team. So it's come a long way. You mentioned that position, that needing that kind of a unicorn role. And that talent was so hard to find. So I do want to talk about that role, because that's a role that we didn't offer at the time to any of our clients, and it was a risk for us too. And we worked on it together. So let's talk a little bit about that role and where we are with that role today.
Yeah, so it's our grants manager role is what we called it when it lived at HMI, and that might be what it's called now. It feels like so much more than that. But when you're a small nonprofit, you're looking for a grants manager who understands restricted giving, who understands nonprofit finance and accounting, and your salary range is usually not for someone with anywhere near those qualifications. And it's a really big job that needs to have a huge amount of connection to internal at HMI information, donor relationships. It's really the bridge between the donor relationship, the donor expectation, the program delivery, and our finance side. And so it's a really complicated role. And probably for 2.5 years, I've been like, Surjeet, are you sure you can't do it? Are you sure you can't do it? Can we please do it? And so finally, we got to a point where I think we understood what those pieces were internally. And we had a really lovely transition with the person that had been doing that with us in a way that has made it. I was just telling Surjeet before the webinar started that this has been the easiest budget process I've ever gone through in my time at any nonprofit because having this person that has access to all of our internal information and is really closely linked with our development team and the forecasts that we're doing and the projections that we're making, and also having somebody who speaks directly to and is in the systems that BTQ operates has been such an efficiency exercise for us instead of getting it one way, having to translate it back and give it back. It's just been it's saved so much time. It's so much clarity. We're able to ask for money in a much smarter way now because we know where our holes are immediately. It's been great.
That's so much great to hear. Like I said, this role, we never offered it to clients. Typically, all of our clients have an in-house, whether you call it the grants manager role or contracts manager, or like, or even a director or budget. I've seen like different titles held across other organizations. And this role basically works closely with the development department, works with the program directors, and handles like the government contracts, the payroll allocation, and knows what's going on in the field, and sort of then comes back and translates that information to us. And then that's how the reporting, it makes it through, the monthly vouchering, the reporting, and so forth. And HMI was struggling with this position. The individual that was in there, we were just not getting the value from that role. And after several conversations with Amy over the year, just beginning with what's expected out of this role, we went out and we recruited a high level individual with the financial background, brought him on board, spent the enough time bringing him up to speed about the organization's mission and doing that orientation, and then deployed him with the caveat that this may not work out. We've never done this before. This role is going to report directly into your executive team, work side by side with the development department, work reported to the CPO, will be dealing with the program directors, and will stay on top of what the operational needs are, the funder compliance, and so forth. And so far, it's worked out great, and we're getting more than what we expected from this role. And this position, the individual is now doing budget forecasting for future, and strategic value is being added. So I'm so happy to see that it's a win-win on both ends, because now we can offer it to other organizations who are in the need of this role.
Yeah. And I think I think there's a moment where like the onboarding was so unique, right? Because we did our HMI onboarding with this person in terms of how we onboard to our mission and to our culture, but then also the BTQ onboarding. And there's such value in that dynamic as well. Because we're two very different structural, you know, organizations and cultural organizations that it was a really lovely opportunity to do that.
For other nonprofit leaders that are listening, what should they look for if they want a real partner and not just another vendor or provider who just wants to build a monthly?
Yeah, I mean, the strongest example I can think of is that I was trying to sell you on upselling me, right? For this additional thing. I never felt like there was, we offer that and this is how much it costs, and that there was never kind of an upsell or what do you need? It's truly like, can we figure this out together? Does this competency exist? Can it exist internally? There was not just well, it's going to cost this much. I think I mean, that our finances better than most of us do. And so knowing what we could sustain, knowing what we couldn't sustain, and building something together rather than being sold and packaged something feels different. Um, I mean, and I guess it had to be because it's a new thing, right? Like it didn't exist before, so you had to kind of build it together. But there's been lots of instances with lots of vendors that just kind of build it and package it and push it out. And it felt just even the hiring process and onboarding process felt like something unique in that.
What advice would you give, Amy, to nonprofit leaders that are currently, considering outsourcing or restructuring the finance function, or even, thinking of, hey, maybe we'll bring it as an interim solution to see if it even works. Any thoughts on that?
So the moral of the story is it's a really good idea. The main part of the story is that it's a lot of work and preparation and really committing to understanding that you're not going to speak the same financial language most of the time when you land together, that you're not going to have the same way of looking at documents, that the forms and the reports that you use are going to be very different, and that you don't need to feel scared or judged by whatever it is that you're providing. I think that was a big concern, is like, oh, somebody with like real finance chops is going to be looking at all of our internal stuff and this is going to expose us to risk or reputational issue. And it was not like that at all. But be prepared for work. Yeah, there's a lot of communication. It's not just one or two people. It's all of the departments have this opportunity to engage with and build a system. But um, all of the, in the leadership transition and the onboarding, which felt like a very long time, it's so worth it. But and we're probably took a lot longer to get there than most people will, full disclosure. But now that it's working, it's wonderful.
Currently, HMI doesn't have a in-house CFO. BTQ has assigned a VPF that functions in that role, and partners with you on the finance committee meetings, the board meetings. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, and that experience and how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, Weedley's just one of the team. Our Weedley, our guy. He attends all of our board meetings. He attends our finance committee meetings. It feels like he's on staff, and we have a hybrid staff, so we have lots of staff that are remote. So there's really no distinguishable difference. He's at our events. It really truly feels like he's part of the team and available and invested. I think for a long time we didn't have the right staffing at all. And so myself or our chief program officer were stepping into what a more internal senior leader would be as we kind of get into that. But as we've learned from Weedley and Surjeet and everybody on the team, that accountability and response has been pushed down into senior director and director roles in the organization, in a way that I think is really empowering and affirming for them. And they're, BTQ and Weedley are much better coaches on nonprofit finance than I will ever be in a million years. So um, it's been really good. Our board knows him really well, and it's been transparency. Like there never feels like there's something we have to tell Weedley that we can't tell the board. That it's been working pretty well.
Great. And you guys have the most amazing events. I love attending all HMI's events. There's an event coming up in July, Schools Out in the Hamptons, if anyone is interested in joining. So
Good plug, Surjeet. Good plug.
you want to sell off the last couple of
Yeah.
seats that are available. Anything else to conclude, Amy? Anything else that you would like to say? I know outsourcing can seem like a big scary decision, right? It impacts a lot of people, it impacts all the departments and so forth, and from optics standpoint it also sometimes can send the wrong message. So anything in conclusion you would like to say on, if someone was considering outsourcing, um what what would what would you recommend, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's, and I guess I can say like the information that I have now versus what I had before, especially in leadership and trying to operate the organization, is I can tell you what my cash flow is going to be 18 months from now, week by the week. And I can make decisions based on that well in advance instead of, oh, that one grant didn't come in, scramble, scramble, what do we do? You know, understanding because Surjeet and the team have inroads and other clients that have the same government contractors as we do and understand, well, they were just delayed, or I don't think that's going to be an issue for them. And with, you know, the HUD closures around communities like ours that are served, having other people and having our finance team have access to other people that can escalate things through has saved projection moments in terms of cash flow. You know, being able to have a 3-year finance plan that's real, that's not just like round it up by 10% and we'll figure out how to cover the money, feels really, really exciting in this moment and allows us to spend a little bit more time being strategic instead of reactive, even in this moment when funding is so volatile for our community.
We'll take questions if there are any from the audience.
Yeah, we did have a couple questions come in. So, this first one, Surjeet, I think it would be good for you to answer, and Amy, feel free to chime in as well. The question is, what size nonprofit is best suited for outsourced finance?
Oh, that's a great question. So currently, we serve clients ranging from an annual budget side of 3 million to up to 650 million. So it's a wide range, but our sweet spot really is between 25 million to like a 50 million, right? And those are the organizations that come heavy on government contracts, a mix of private funding, and government funding, and also medical billing as well. We have clients in all sectors like human services, housing agencies, foundations, membership organizations, arts and culture, and so forth. So we have expertise in all these areas. And our focus is just to, bring the financial expertise, the government expertise, and modern technology, build processes and workflows so the organizations like HMI can focus on their mission and not worry about their cash flow or the back end office or the day-to-day transactional needs.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
would just add that we're about, I think when we started with BTQ, we were maybe eight and a half, maybe, and now we're between 11 and 12. And so it felt real scary at the time, but was certainly the right move.
Awesome. Thank you. And then this next question we have, Amy, I'll read it for you first. How should organizations prepare internally before making a change?
I think it's an organizational change, not a few staff member change. And so I think you have to socialize it with lots of staff because lots of staff are going to be asked questions and asked to contribute information as BTQ builds the profile and the portfolios and all the reports and data that they need. And at least for us, that didn't live all in one place. In a way that made sense. And so knowing that there is going to be a little bit of work, people are going to be taking on extra things in this onboarding and just planning for that in terms of their general workflow, their hours, whatever it is that you need to deal with. Um, and making, at least for us, making time to like understand them as people and like kind of what their goals are and what they're trying to get out of it. Because I think a lot of people, that myself included, we're not finance people, can be intimidated by finance language and feel kind of on the outside of it. And so just knowing that you can, ask questions and that we don't all have to be finance experts. That's why we're hiring the finance experts, and that BTQ is more than qualified and has lots of experience in translating to people that are not. So,
I mean, the only thing I would add to that as well is just, be transparent to the staff fully, right? Like it's not about the role is, we're bringing expertise in, it's creating efficiencies and better reporting and better systems, right? That's what we bring to the table.
and I think for those of us that are hybrid or have fully remote staff, it doesn't feel as disruptive for maybe somebody that's a fully in-person organization. And so I think that's an interesting parallel. If you're used to everybody being in a room, but your finance team, that, I'm sure it's something that you can accomplish, but we don't have that situation. So,
Right. Well, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have from our audience, but thank you so much, Amy and Surjeet, for being here today and sharing all of your knowledge with us.